Welcome to Jessie at Home in the Stitchopedia. In this Stitchopedia video, I am showing you how to make these crossed double crochets. There is a very common cross double crochet where you're actually working over top of the previous double crochet, where you skip one, you double crochet, and then you double crochet into the stitch that you skipped, working over top of everything. This isn't that way. These stitches are actually separate. You can see I can put my finger through this little cross, okay, which you can't do on that other one. They kind of attach to each other. So this is a little different. I really like using this stitch on borders of blankets. I like doing it on a border of a blanket. It's in the Jake's Blankie crochet along that I have on the blog as a border, where I do a row of double crochet and then a row of the crosses and then a row of double crochet and a row of the crosses, and I really like it that way. But if your pattern is calling for this stitch and you're kind of unsure about the pushing the stitches to the front and the back part and everything, hopefully this video will explain it all for you, make things a little easier. I tend to prefer to do the stitches that are leaning to the right. I find them easier to make than the stitches that lean to the left. But, you know, whatever your pattern says is what you want to go for. And here you can see this is the back. This is worked in rows. If it's worked in rounds, things look a little differently. But in worked in rows, this is what you get on the back. This is what you get on the front. Okay. So, oh, and for this video, I have used Red Heart soft yarn and a US, which hook is this? A US H or 8 or 5mm crochet hook with the Red Heart soft yarn, and it comes out really nicely for this pattern. All right, so let's get started on making this practice piece. Oh, and you can find the instructions for the practice piece in the text attached to this video. There's written instructions for the practice piece and written instructions for the stitches, and also a chart to show you how to make the practice piece. I've started the little practice piece here, and to do that I have chained 17 and then I double crocheted into the 4th chain from the hook into each remaining chain across, which gave me 14 double crochet, and then this little chain 3 turning chain, which counts as a total of 15 stitches. So here's our little foundation, our first row for this practice piece, and now we're going to turn and we're going to start row 2, which will have these little double crochet crossover stitches. So we're going to start with a chain 3, and then we're going to double crochet. That chain 3 counts as our first stitch, so we're going to double crochet into the 2nd stitch. Now we're going to make our first crossover, and our first row of crossovers are all going to be crossovers that lean to the left because they're a little bit easier. So we're going to skip one stitch and we're going to double crochet into the next. And then all you're going to do is you're going to double crochet into the stitch that you skipped, but you're going to work in front of everything. There is the other stitch that you often see is a double crochet that's worked over top, where you'll put your stitch in and then you'll just work over everything like this. That's not what we're going to do. We want to work in front, so you're actually going to kind of push everything to the back, push the stitch you just made to the back, and then put your hook in. Okay, and you see sometimes you kind of didn't stay there. You have to get that stitch behind your hook. So all that you've got under your hook is the stitch that you skipped. You do not have the double crochet that you just made. That is where things get a little bit into the finagling your yarn. Okay, so we'll do it again. We're going to make one more regular double crochet into the next stitch, okay, after that little crossover. Now we're going to skip one and double crochet into the next. Then we're going to double crochet into the stitch we skipped in front of all of this. So you can put your hook through, but then you need to make sure that, actually it's a lot easier for me to actually push behind first, sorry. Trying to get all fancy there. Push that behind first, find the stitch that you skipped, and get your hook in there. And then make your double crochet. Okay, That's another X, and then we're going to double crochet into the next stitch. So there's the, we worked into this stitch, then we worked into this stitch, now we're going to just make a regular old double crochet into the next one. That'll be a straight up and down double crochet. And let's do that crossover one more time. Skip one, double crochet into the next. Actually, I think there's room for two more. Then double crochet into the stitch that you skipped. Push all of that behind. Go into the stitch you skipped. Make a double crochet. And then double crochet into the next unworked stitch. I split something. There we go. Skip a stitch, double crochet into the next. Push everything you just did behind and double crochet into the stitch that you skipped. Then double crochet into the next unworked stitch and double crochet into the turning chain. Okay, so they don't quite look like much yet. Let's get the return row on them, and then they'll look a little bit more like something. So for your return row, I mean, you just work into the stitches like you normally would. Whatever your pattern says to do on the next row, you just go ahead and do. We're just doing double crochets all the way across for this practice piece. So just double crochet. You started with a chain 3 and then double crochet all the way across. Okay, so I just finished my return row, and so you're actually seeing the backs of our crossover stitches. And when working in rows, I actually like the back better. When I work this stitch in the round, like as a border on a blanket, it looks really good from the front side. But when you're working in rows back and forth, it looks better. I think it just looks better if the in-between rows happen to be on the front. I think might be what it is. I'm not really sure. I just like the look better. You do what makes you happy, or actually you just follow your pattern if you're following a pattern. But if you're doing this pattern that I'm doing right now with a row of crosses and then a row of doubles, I like it better from the back with the double rows being the front as opposed to the cross rows being the front, if that makes any sense. So we just completed our return row. We turn it over. You see what I mean? How it looks different now on this side? They don't pop as much because of the way the backs of the double crochet rows look. So we're going to do those last 2 rows one more time. Okay, I'll get you started on this one, and then we will meet up after we've completed them. So we did our chain 3 and then double crochet into the second stitch because the chain 3 counted as our first. And then let's do 1 crossover here. Skip 1, double crochet into the next, and then pushing everything to the back, double crochet into the skipped stitch. Oh, I didn't quite get it that time. Push everything to the back, double crochet. Sorry. See, that's why it's hard to do on the video. I tend to put it a little closer to myself. Push everything to the back, double crochet into the skipped stitch. There we go. And now you're going to just continue this row the same as you did this one, and then do a return row, and then we will do the stitches leaning the opposite direction, leaning to the right. Okay, so I've completed another row of the crosses and a return row of the just double crochets, and now we are going to do the crosses that cross the opposite direction. So we start off with a chain 3, and then we double crochet into the second stitch. Okay, now it starts the same way. We skip a stitch and we double crochet into the next one. And now we're going to double crochet into the stitch that we skipped, only this time we're going to push everything to the front. So we're actually working behind. Okay, so push everything to the front, and working behind all of that, double crochet into the skipped stitch. This one's actually easier. Maybe I should have started with this one, right? And then double crochet into the next stitch, next unworked stitch, there we go. Let me show you that again. We're going to double crochet, skip 1, double crochet into the next stitch. Push everything to the front and double crochet into the stitch that you skipped. So you're working behind the stitch you just made, and you're going to double crochet into the stitch that you skipped. That makes your cross. Now we're going to double crochet into the next unworked stitch, and let's make another cross. Skip 1, double crochet into the next. Push everything to the front and double crochet. Suddenly I've lost my fingering here. Push everything to the front, double crochet into the stitch that you skipped. There's another cross, double crochet into the next unworked stitch. Skip 1, double crochet into the next stitch. Push everything into the front. Everything to the front. And double crochet into the stitch that you skipped. And double crochet into the next unworked stitch. And double crochet into the turning chain. And now we work back across that row the same way. We chain 3, double crochet into the next stitch, and each stitch across. So let me get that return row done, and then we'll really take a look at this. I did my return row. So now what we're going to do is do those last 2 rows one more time, and then let's come back here and look at it again, and you'll have your nice little practice piece done. Alright, we have completed the last 2 rows one more time, and this is what it looks like. You can see we have stitches that lean to the left on the bottom and stitches that lean to the right, the top 2 sections, either way. Top 2 sets of stitches are leaning to the right, bottom 2 sets of stitches are leaning to the left, and even when we flip it over, there's still the bottom 2 go to the left and the top 2 go to the right. You decide which side you like better, or whatever your pattern says, either way. But now you understand how to make these crossed double crochets that are not connected. Okay, so there it is. And thank you very much for watching.